What's good, everybody? It's King here. Welcome to a very interesting video of mine where I tap back into talking about narrative in different form of, joy for shit. This video is going to be another video that possibly have me in the mixed case of viewing and controversial mixed pick. But as you see by the title and the screen, I'm going to be ranking the MCU villains from worst to best, right? AKA give my opinion on them in multiple different unique form. I have almost every MCU villain of mixed different renown from different creative, MCU shows as well, a mixture. But I did the most biggest, most relevant, and most good deal one I feel like to be had, right? When it comes down to the case of, obviously Mcu Villain Tier, right? I'm not gonna have everybody that possibly people will want, but this is everyone from the movies, for what I know, and account for others. As it's a big tier list, it's going to be a decently, long video, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. And yeah, simply put as that. First, starting off, let's go over the tiers from bottom this time. Don't remember, hard garbage, bad, meh, fine, great, amazing, go being the best, S amazing being great, form villains, great obviously being great sinister, good villains, right? As obviously great B. But I would probably say what sticks, amazing more out is that they push a whole different tier or something, but they're not staying in the antithesis of villain. Gray is a great under that as they are very, foul, maybe villains are very much, proud, cool case of characters, very profound in their own form. Fine is, pretty solid, excelente with this shit. Meh, middle ground, mid, bad, just not a very good villain, but maybe entirely not tarnish or goodness. Hot garbage should even be here. You know what I'm saying? I probably put a different title for this just because of funny. Hot cheeks, absolutely dog shit. Don't remember. Obviously, don't remember them. Simply put, for all the cases, the Constitution for the tiers. Big set. Let's go and get it popping. Surtur. Now, obviously, doesn't actually hold a big single case of villain role. He works for what he is. I like his design. He doesn't really do too much. His character is really more of a mixed bag plot relevance to just character that comes in here to bring about hefty destruction. The Fire Giant King, the big fire Jotnar, strongest Jotnar, big dog. You know what I'm saying? The big Dunzel of a lot of different forms of Norse Pantheon, the men to bring about Ragnarok and bring about the decimation of Asgard, entirely imploding that bitch and eradicating it off the senses. Crazy, type of kid shit. But yeah, he just works for what he is. Ironmonger, I think from a design perspective, it makes sense. Acting is cool, but writing wise is actually bad. He doesn't have a really true reason to course about the way he does as a villain, even though his motivations and shit is understandable. The way he moves Ironmonger, I think, is very much greatly showcasing of not just a out-of-pocket, ODly psychotic and disturbed man that doesn't really have any partial, essence of greater tangling of something more intriguing or actually of substance matter for why he is what he is. Because the thing is, the Ironmonger wants to take Tony's company. He wants to get rich. He is very selfish and very much in every creative of the way the basic pain-smoking two-faced villain where he acts this mentor and unk to Tony, but really wants to, protrude through his defenses and soak poison to sea. He's a snake. He's a bitch. But the way he moves about it, where he deliberately does chaotic actions, doesn't plan ahead for them in a greater form eventually against Tony, and doesn't really act as smart, and he doesn't have to be as smart as he is. Again, he works for the first MCU movie, and Iron Man 1 is still good, but I think he's like the only real problem really with it is that he's not really a very good villain. He doesn't really have a lot of strong, greater stance for why he's doing what he's doing, and besides acting, design, name, doesn't really pull anything greater substance matter to me. So, yeah. You're from the Guardians of the Galaxy, played by a dope actor, but doesn't really do too much. So I'd probably say bad, not because he's actually a bad villain, I guess, but not anything of super great regard. Malekith, hot cheeks, booty, wasted potential, bastardization of him. Hela, I think she's fine. I think she works. Basic evil, but charismatic, interesting, powerful, zealous, very kinetic with her words and what she does. She's one of the most skilled, dynamically, beautifully evil synergy of her combatant being all in working, of being stylishly fitting for her, where she walks down people in the most crazy, very like, to me, the standpoint of what it means to be bad bitch energy. Like, she be running through people, skewering people, popping out random shit left and right from her body. Her body is a living weapon, and she revels in that with no care, right? She's such a very interesting and stylish character. Her lore has a deep matter of, interesting symbolic meant and deeper touch and regard for interesting shit, you know what I'm saying, that has not been seen. I feel like in the MCU, until eventually as time, I feel like she laid a great deal of weight. The way she was defeated is very fitting, and the credit that she personifies the strength of Asgard is ever, growing stronger. She's unrelenting, but a immovable and unstoppable force like Surtur was the being to all around bring the end to not just her reign as Queen of Asgard, but entirely her conception of power. And I'm imagining her possibly from just the fucking spear and with the sword, right? And she got an incredible actress, put in great work and great sense of coolness as a character. I love her design. Every aspect of Hela is gourmet dumb and very much, Defente character, like I said. And as well as, what I'm saying, bad bitch, like I said. I mean, it's like Shawty was pulling all them type of crazy matters and shit. Shawty is the type of person that Zephyr be talking about. She's so bad, you know what I'm saying? Like, Shawty was greatly crafted, coming together as a character, beautifully put together. And yeah, it's every way that she was moving was so stylishly saucy with it. Shawty was really cooking niggas. But anyway, Laufey, father of Loki, king of the Frost Giants. I think for what he had, even though he didn't get to really, stand his ground as really a greater, posing, interesting matter of person. He's simply, the stereotypical guy that wants to reign over an entire case of, hellish ice fall and or age over Midgard and entirely, bring about a whole new status quo of either evil Mirage or credit of like new standing for himself as the Frost Giants in their home, even if it is entirely a way off plane for us, right? Like it's entirely like snow globe. They had no real reason to come over to Midgard and try to go ahead and bury the mortals in the Ice Age, right? Like Laufey does what he does for whatever flimsy about case of reasons. He's just an evil king that desires power, and as simple as that, he's plain as fuck. In the greater grandstand, don't get it twisted, it is entirely story of having coolness. He has a cool actor, cool voice acting, cool different crowning of power, and is one of the most interesting, greater form of, characters, and there's a great, tale of, interesting power scaling and other kind of shit with that. And he is the father of Loki, so he is cool, but yeah, simple as that. Ghost, not really a villain at one point, but for what she was, she has instant reasoning for why she does what she does. Cool design, cool creative powers, all around fine sense of like villain, but isn't really fully a villain, so I wouldn't really categorize her as that. And people that technically aren't in truth villains and are more antagonists or anti-villains or gray characters will still be accounted, but for what her mixed matter of villainous standing is, I think she is reasonably a fine for what it is. You know what I'm saying? They have the dude from Black Widow, who is not actually any great interesting character, even with the fact of the matter of him being behind all this despicable fuck actions. He doesn't have anything to really call from in the matter for personality, substance. He's just a very one-off, stereotypical case of evil villain that plots evil shit, doesn't do anything. He's just bad, but not like greater form bad. He's just simply bad with nothing to offer. Thanos. I think I'm gonna wait before I actually put Thanos. This is gonna be a very divisive pick, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and like to put in all my thoughts, because if I talk about Thanos right now, the video is gonna be way too longer than what people want to actually go about peeking for. So yeah, no. Whiplash. Yeah, great potential to be around more cool and interesting villain. I think probably top of bad, just from like he's bad, but in the sense that he doesn't really stand out in a greater form thing. He blames Stark's more family and legacy for the unconsiderate, non-compassionate thing to his family. Because I don't know if I'm even actually acknowledging his ideals right. I don't want to like misconstrue, misrepresent. Correct me if I'm wrong. What he is doing his thing for is vengeance. He wants revenge, right? He wants to take what he feel like is rightfully his family's stuff. They contributed to a great deal of the technology and greater foundation for shit involving Stark Industries, coming from wrong. And he blames all of the sickness and credit of illness of his father on them, because if he didn't have to work so hard and was more properly compensated for it, it wouldn't put him through a great wringer of pain. So he blames Stark, said he's going to kill the last of the Starks, aka Tony Stark. And as a criminal, as a heathen, as whatever dude, right, he's going to go out and try to kill him. But how he moves about shit, I feel like it's very stupid, very weird, the most random form of planning. His design is kind of cool, but doesn't really pull anything of greater regard. His last design, being an Ongermonger like Pacific Rim design, is mixed kind of like being cool and just essence, but not really standing as anything more than just another stereotypical big dog fighting, aka what Ironmonger is, aka Jeff Bridges or the JRB or whatever the fuck the actual like acronym is called by Cosmonaut. Right, shout out to him. With the case of that, title and shit, but yeah, he just simply isn't anything of actual greater substance matter. He does have more because his reasons for being a villain or his charisma and design. Hold on. Sorry, I heard something great deal with my family, but don't ask. But yeah, what I was gonna full say, right, was the fact that he doesn't have anything of greater galore, but he does have decent foundation for shit that can at least say he's a entertaining villain, to say the least. Right? So yeah, he's not entirely like a horrid version of the character like this version. Don't know who the shorty is. Read him accuse a person. German computer. I remember him, but he's not anything greater. As just Sir Carey, he's just plain whatever. He's kind of funny because he is a fucking computer with a German accent. That's funny. Ultron, a mixed divisive one. Okay, this is not where I actually want to put him, but I want to say I'm kind of mixed between Ultron not being waste potential entirely by concept, but having a lot more to be gained. I feel like he could have been a greater saga unique villain. I think Ultron has been mixed, kind of shafted or underutilized and misrepresented in different form of coolness and bangerness. I feel like Ultron did have some coolness in Age of Ultron, and I think he was a good villain. I think at his core, he had a cool pull of shit, but I feel like he could have pushed to be a little bit of something of grander substance and nuance and telling of something more. This terrifying, big, menacing villain. The jokes part is fine, but I wish I could want to dabble with a little bit more of his terrifying essence, where he is a literal walking being of destruction, a man that looks for the entire annihilation of humanity and doesn't care who they are, flesh, mutant, whoever, all weak to him, and it's mainly that adaptation for him. Right, but even just taking away the comics in comparison with him, I think that he holds a great deal of stance of being not only cool, creative, and great substance matter for his character, right? But he could have had a little bit more tale of some more unique situations, things to be had. I feel like he could have moved a lot more tactically strong. The fact that Black Widow was just easily being able to escape, and the fact he didn't do nothing with Black Widow. The fact that I feel like his entire fight, he didn't really plan out for anything of greater essence with him. And I feel like he was just kind of like downgrade of a lot of his iconic tropes and the most endearing parts where he's menacing, powerful, very much good in numbers. He's one of the most dangerous, unorthodox, and fling of all different type of whoppy-doo affinity pool of danger and atrocities to be had. And I just feel like they could have tapped more into that. But with all that being said, I like to say that he's up here. I might change this, but I think he's fine. I think he's cool. I think he works. I think he's the fine sense of villain that works for what he's doing. The voice acting, I think, is beautiful, even though it's that type of voice I want. You would never be able to type, Marvel Rivals voice actor, aka Ramantra, basically, or like, count for, Marvel's Earth's Mightiest Avengers, right? You'll never be able to peak that. But yeah, that's just some fine shit. What are Thanos' children? Meh, works. What's the fucking name? Technically the antagonist of Eternals, even though that's more Icarus. But Ursham, barely even shit to be had about him, so I don't fucking know. Med, just like on design and feel, like probably put him there, but he's like not even actually technically a villain. He's not even like character. Like he's a being that is a overlarping, threat in the grand scope. Like he's an overarching threat. He's a big dog, of power, fear. He commands a great deal of matter of not just respect, but intrigue because of being the Eternals creator and a Celestial, but he doesn't really recognize anything in greater sense, and he's not truly a sense of a villain, so I wouldn't put him over Surtur in greater form. He doesn't stand out. GSP, don't remember you. I know you're supposed to actually be a true Captain America villain, but don't care. Cheeks just like your master, don't care. I forgot his name, but played by Andy Serkis, the GOAT, plays Caesar. I like his personality, different aspects, and I liked him in Age of Ultron for what he was, but he's in a movie I'm not the biggest fan of what is being said in greater form, right? But I say for what he is, I'll give him a good about meh, Killmonger. Now, I know this is where a lot of niggas might click off this video for. I have a lot to say about Killmonger. Okay, listen. Killmonger, I think, has a great feel in the aspect that he is a villain that does everything he does out of overzealousness. He's a very demon, cruel, full-fledged, crash out, unhinged stand. All his means are from spiral, very devilish intent. He gives a Broly staying sense of animosity and craze form of like being demon time crazy with his not just charisma, personality, and mixed essence of combat. He's the crucium of what it means to be a lion that is fueled by hunger and bloodlust to no end. But in actual ideals, I think the reason why he does what he does is not very sensible. I feel like there's multiple critiques for why. Okay, first of all, he shouldn't even be able to beat T'Challa, right? I don't give a fuck if he doesn't have the herb. T'Challa is a masterclass martial artist. The training that this man, Killmonger, has talked about should not, at face value, give him any true merit to be able to defeat T'Challa, especially with weapons and other shit that he has no actual understanding of. T'Challa has been a trained, proficient veterinar of martial arts and warriorhood, and as the Black Panther has more ownership, more decree of fighting spirit than him. Unlike in comparison with M'Baku, who not only in comparison to the comics is reasonably, a strong superhuman dude, but has his own statements and shit that put him on a different regard. And the fact that his weapons, like all mixed bag or vibranium or greater, material than what they seem, it makes sense. But then in the day, T'Challa still beat him, and it's different. And M'Baku is an open field dude, right? This man Killmonger's statements shouldn't give him that. Plus, I think Killmonger in the comics being basically like Black Kraven the Hunter, but with a style of like Sundowner, the wrathful, very savage, dynamic essence of like Vaz Montenegro, with a little bit of that cutthroat case of charisma and peer into some very dystopian but very intricate like aspect of philosophy on the values of Wakanda, the greater purpose of Africa as a continent, and culture being the definement for people, nature versus nurture, has a lot more interesting style. Him being kind of just this very raw-doo random essence of like Blacker Force energy that doesn't really tie to anything that really actually makes sense is my problem. And the problems are this. First of all, he shouldn't even became Killmonger. I don't know why King T'Chaka would do what he does. Don't get it twisted. King T'Chaka can be flawed in killing his own brother out of it being an unfortunate case of like instinct and mixed like honor killing, because his brother did betray the crown, even if he didn't need to kill him, right? But the fact that Killmonger was in some way betrayed as his own flesh and blood and disposed of the chance to do anything greater is fucked and doesn't make sense to me. Granted, that can be the flaw, but the flaw doesn't really make sense. If T'Chaka didn't know about him and or didn't say that, right? If he didn't tell this nigga T'Challa that he knew about him, that would be different. He did, so that's the problem. Two, the dude literally wanted vengeance against T'Challa. Why would you want to become king? And then his reasons, right, mixed back, kind of have some sense of substance. But it's the way he moves about it. He moves like a man that is only doing what he's doing to pour new levels of fucked uproar and conflict just to feel some sense of dopamine. He's a guy that is just very overzealous, cutthroat, and out of pocket. And from the case of the cusses that he's came through and his mental, kind of like diminishing of greater factors of compassion, sympathy, or purpose, I can understand why he would go to the edge of being a very sociopathic or very unequivocally fucked individual, right? This guy hinges on the idea of being a man that pulls all the actions he does off of the back of him going from unfortunate trauma and wanting to instill trauma upon others to reform a world in his own possible image. But the difference is that the way he moves about it is not strategical. First of all, the idea to help other black people that suffer the way you do is understandable. He does not do it the way he's saying he's doing it. He's just doing it out of fuck means. Alright, first of all, he shouldn't even have any fucking audacity, any authority to be king. Like, T'Challa can deny him. Also, it's been critiqued to death that the customs of Wakanda about the whole tribal combat thing is horribly, dumb and is not even a sensible idea. By the fact that just because anyone challenges you or anyone is family should not actually give them any actual rightful, declarement for that. It's because this guy, even though, yes, is actual royal blood, T'Challa should be able to deny him regardless. You are a nobody. You are a waste man. You are not a part of this culture. And our politics should be way too evolved beyond just being, I challenge you to a fight, now you must throw down. Like, that's stupid. The whole even trial by combat thing is horribly customed into play by, I feel like, Wakanda, when they are arguably the most advanced and superficial society. The entire tribal combat is horrendously even like a concept in greater form, not just because of the fact of even being a thing, but by the own words of the king. As they have said in their own words that they are this and this and this, and King T'Chaka in Civil War, which is, I feel like, the best representation of not just him, but also his son T'Challa, who I would argue in that movie is arguably the best character, demonstrates the fact that they have evolved beyond the superstition, the paranoia, and the very ancient customs of the people. They have pushed past, again, this faulty ideal of trial by combat. Why does the king need to be defined by strength? No, it is about your character. Character represents leadership. Attitude represents leadership. It's about integrity. Killmonger has none of that to Wakanda. He never demonstrated that. He gave no arguments for why, and all his arguments is just fucked. And the whole idea, like, I don't think it's out of racism, but the idea just, I'm gonna wreck house on everyone that isn't black to uplift black people to be on our same culture is not only stupid, but very clouded and just straight up ignorance that is not interesting, right? It makes him just sound stupid, fucked, and very biased, which, again, I'm not surprised that he want to instill greater power with black people, but it not being like in Africa or Wakanda and reforming things in his own image of a very war-defined place, a militarized, kingdom, is my problem. And again, it's not backed up by any logic. King T'Chaka was king while T'Challa was the Black Panther. The Black Panther does not, by definition, have to be king or queen. You are protector, you are guardian, you are warrior. You are not to be king because you have that title. Not every Black Panther, by legendary status or obscurity, had to be king. And every Black Panther with the title passed down from generations and generations was king. T'Challa was not being king when he was Black Panther. King T'Chaka was king. That was said in Civil War, that was shown. He doesn't have to be that just because he's family. And that's stupid anyway. And it's like, I just feel like the entire council is fucking stupid for even allowing him to be there. And Baku reasonably called this out in the second movie. And like, it just seems stupid. Like, it doesn't make sense. And unlike in the comics, where his ideals are entirely tied, yes, to vengeance against T'Challa, as it's more tied to the fact that his father and Wakanda has wronged his people. They undermined the struggles that he had when he was rightfully a part of the bloodline. So he feels like he's owned something. But he's like a compound V crackhead crash out, right? He moves on means to reform Wakanda in his image of a war-torn, defined, you know what I'm saying, empire, where they are going to cruise about through Africa, taking down all the weakness, refigurating the entire continent in his own image. And if anyone gets in their way, he'll deal with them, but he'll deal with it strategically. They'll go country, city, whatever, one by one, bringing them back to the heart of the Afro continent. You know what I'm saying? Bring people back to the heart of the Rhino continent, greatest continent on the planet. We will reinvent our people through war or conflict, the things that stain humanity. It's a part of who we are as people, and has been the way that we have always excelled. Wakanda came out of the dirt. We've been through the trenches, my nigga. And if we gonna do anything, it's gonna be through this. He don't do that. So, I'm being generous when I say this. That, yeah, the acting is cool, his design is cool, the Golden Jaguar is cool, but I do think he's bad. I think he's a bad adaptation. I think he's a degrade to a lot of the greater essence and intrigue that ties with the character in the comics. I think a lot of his writing is bad. I think a lot of his like decision making and way of even doing shit is actually stupid. Like, you can be a dumb villain. Like, your ideas, what you're going for, can be dumb, but it's how you do it. If your dumbness doesn't make sense, then it's a problem. Killmonger is dumb because he just doesn't make sense. All his values are entirely abhorrent ideals that are not tied to anything of great validity. Him wanting vengeance, understandable, even if it, again, is a byproduct by his unfortunate trauma, right? And that type of trauma at a young age will probably put a nigga into a whole new spiral of grade A crash out, right? A motherfucker who's going to be rabid, overzealous, wrecking them by hound activity. He just ruins the entire sympathization with him. Okay, I do think Killmonger was all around a villain. I do love a lot of shit with him. I do think the final fight with him and T'Challa, even though CGI being bad, I think it was cool, and I do love his final line, but again, he's not really a good villain to me. So, hate on me in the comments for that. It's been critiqued. He's been critiqued by multiple people. So, you know, again, I guess agree, disagree, or unless you want to actually debate that, which I'm going to do, as always, RP324 as my Discord. You know, we'll always be open, right? But still, again, if you disagree, fine. But again, if you wanted to grow, you know, more into understanding about why I say what I say, and it's maybe not being the best articulated here, there are a few videos I could give you an example, not at hand right now, but I'm just saying, like, later on. But again, if you actually do want to go about a case of debating and want to go about actually understanding a little bit more, my Discord is RPKing3124, right? Sorry for the hiccup. But full take light on another, I don't know who the fuck this goblin is. Yeah, call Obsidian. Same thing, like the case. Brother works 40 years. Dormammu is a interesting threat. Does not stand out too greater substance of like interestingness to the point where it's ready to send a callback or remember. He's just this omniscient, higher grandstand being that is more of a force of nature than anything else. I like how he's presented. I like his design, but he doesn't really stake any greater weight or substance matter for me to really like, I guess, care. But he works from the count for how he does shit. I like how he's defeated. I like his presence. I like the type of being that he presents himself as, right? And it's, you know, all around fine, to say the least, in this instance. The Lizard, series made Spider-Man 1 No Way Home. I don't like the reason why he's going about doing what he's doing No Way Home, because I don't really think it makes sense all around for him. Yeah. But his actual ideals and his purpose in making Spider-Man 1, I think is actually pretty fine, like in the writing stance, but it's all around it. Like, I think it's understandable how he comes to his credit conclusion and his stance on it. I just wish more or less there could have been more substance matter, like for his reasoning beyond just seeing how he came to be, being the end all be all credit for how the world should be. Because he wants to turn everybody into lizards and pretty much make Earth an entire dino extent planet, right? Entirely built off the back and cultivation of making entire world off of like his, evolution from being human to this fucking bioengineered lizard. But even then, still, it stands pretty. I would like to accommodate decent on not just giving reasonableness to it, but wrecking a cool, interesting feel in his own right. So yeah, the Winter Soldier is villain for it. I think is pretty top notch with his feel. Granted, I don't think he's all around better in the case of like ideals or substance matter from him, but he works for what he is. He's a great antagonistic figure, a great force, bringing an onslaught of not just danger, fear, and moving like a fucking horror villain sometimes, and has been beautiful, in a lot of different occasions, not just like as a villain, but as a character. Like Bucky's always cool, but I'm just saying, like, as a character and as a villain in that one sense, again, he's always been very cool, character all around. So I'm kind of saying like he's fine to saying like he's in meh, but only because of the fact that like I don't think he actually is like entirely better than these people in different substance. I do think he's better like than all the rest, but it's more on ideals and credit of like his actual narrative playing of shit, like the actual writing that puts him together. But I will give him that degree of being pretty all around banger, right? Squidward, up here with them a little bit more better, but not too much. Ego, I think is a pretty defined all around villain, with his entire thing being to spread a seed through the most genocidal maniac whole dehumanizing fuck aspect. I love his concept of being a representation of the type of hell of being a godly being that bestows a peaceful, good essence, but his means are very flawed, very fallacious and cruel, right? With no care and compassion for what he does. He literally gave Peter Quill's mother cancer and disregarded all that shit that he said when it came down to his true colors being shown, showing that he does not practice what he preaches, and that his actual, self fully came out as a planet, and that he is, at the end of the day, a deceitful prick in every sense of the way. But I, again, do love a lot of substance matter top with him. I think he's very good. Love the actor for him, and yeah. Don't remember too much of her, but I heard that she's bad, so I'm going to put her in bad. You know what I'm saying? I think all around her, I doesn't why she's doing what she's doing, even though I can give her credit. Have understandable reasons for, the government disregarding, the shambles that they've been through and not showing any lick of compassion or consideration for what she's been through, and much of her bullshit from politics and correspondence of, the unfortunate dilemma that the human race has mostly been through since the blip, right? But, yeah, no. One-off villain that I don't care for, hot cheeks. Icarus. I'm kind of conflicted on Icarus. Like, on one hand, like, he has an interesting stance of, like, being for so long the protagonist or a sense of, like, mainline figure with a lot of interesting substance matter to why he does what he does. But his being, simply put, has always been, like, so kind of, like, basic. It's basic cool. I do think Icarus is just cool. He's just banger with how he does shit, right? Like, he has busting acts to possibly be made to be more endearing or intriguing, but at core, in his core, like, essence, Icarus is just a avatar for the will of Ursham, and he does what he does because he was programmed to. The Eternals, as a movie, I think is pain smoking mid like any other. I think it is the ironic credit of being so mid. It's kind of confusing because it has such a beautiful concept, has so much of a possibility for busting, but it never really sealed a deal on that, and just has a lot of crevices of shit that I feel like it's like unwrapped properly. But simply put, Icarus has great touch to the value of being a person that is only what he is because of it being in his nature, but can try to push past it. And what he does is understandable from the perspective of him, but he entirely pushing for not only the demise of his people, to instill the will of Ursham and see the destruction of planet Earth and all other type of shit, is kind of makes it understandable. But the fact that no one really makes a point against this dude, no one really takes into consideration the fact of what this dude is doing, is that, and only at the kind of like last second they really under like wrap that, I feel like is a little bit of a problem. Like, don't get it twisted. People are against it, like, you know, Makari, Kingo, others, but it's just more like, just because Icarus is the strongest, or because Icarus is the boss, or because Icarus is this very egotistical, seeming, prideful, boastful, kind of like narcissistic dude, should not put down that. Again, no one really puts, I feel like, any spears against this dude in the argument when he's out here flatly, putting his foot down on the fact of the matter that nobody is going to go against the will of Ursham unless they want to die. And I feel like everyone who rationally should don't do it. He has cool fights, his cool feel, and again, as a protagonistic figure and the actor, there's a great sense of sauce and charisma and kindle of like something of very, tasteful feel with him. But I feel like Icarus is the embodiment of a guy that is just a blitzing around powerhouse that doesn't really have any call to anything, a greater sense of creative essence as an antagonist, besides the fact of the matter that, yes, he does have an interesting push, he does have an interesting point, but a lot of it is not backed by anything besides just a nurture thing, and he doesn't really make arguments for why, and he just, to me, just falls flat on coolness. Because everything beforehand, Icarus was such a, I feel like not entirely like to the most bussin' degree, but a little bit more of like a, likable impression in the superhero, archetype of being so much commonly, shown to be this, but still having a few different tweaks. Like, he is the iconic, essence of being the Superman trope, of being exactly what the pinnacle of the Man of Steel is. Power, can invoke justice and fear, but has his own twinks of having interesting dilemma, ties, or reference, like Homelander or Omni-Man. Icarus, like in the comics, even though the comics do a better rep of this, doesn't really stake out greater essence of his more unique feel, where he is, yes, a Superman archetype, but he's more like a drone that has different values that are preached by history, and him having a backwards mindset, him seeing humanity as a plaything, and him doing everything he's done because it's been by command. He, at the end of the day, is a soldier with God's essence of will commanding him. So that is something I think that is very interesting. But in conclusion, kind of makes between saying he's like top of bad and then saying like he's like somewhere meh. Like, yeah, like I feel like that's a good rating for him, to be fair. This man literally was just like a one-off terrorist in Iron Man 1. Don't care. John Walker as an antagonist only, not as a redeem-busting character that we know him to be, or crave everything that he is, and not truly a full-fledged antagonist. I would give him, for why he's doing what he's doing, and aspects of that, right? And what he's going for, and why he is the way he is, and his trauma and a lot of deeper ordeals, and all the greater cracks and refined aspects of Bustin that tie him together to be a character that he has a lot of very, I feel like, say at least slap essence, but he's a very not only misunderstood character, but a very, I feel like slandered to also, to a greater degree, very hyped up, kind of like glazed character in some aspects for what he does. Like, don't get it twisted. His matter for why he is what he is, why he does his antagonistic shit, and why he goes ape shit and then eventually kills that terrorist by decapitating him with the most soldier boy level akin of splitting down the middle with the shield is understandable, but people don't actually peek into the actual creator reckoner, of like this very much displaying of very self-destructive, wild, manic, deeply wounded, and broken aspects of this character. And he reasonably crashed out, I guess, to an extent. And there's a great assortment of good acts that he went about. But not only is John Walker a very loudmouth, naive, ignorant, pitiful man that does a lot of shit out of trying to boast his ego, his self-esteem is in the shambles, and he's a very insecure dude that goes around running his mouth, running his dick suckers without actually talking, the walking the talk, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of feel a little bit mixed, partially mixed to really define him as a villain / antagonist, really, where he's a mixed creative, like, he's not bad, but he's not that dummy good. So I think, unlike these people that have a bunch of caught up things, I think this is a good credit where he should be. You don't really have probably reason to be there. Comparison. Don't remember too much of her from Loki. This is Adam Warlock's mom. I don't really see her fully credited as a villain, but I guess I'll probably like put her like right here for now, right? In comparison next to Ghost. Regressing to her having interesting tie shit and charisma and Phil, an actress of coolness, but not anything too much. Did not watch Echo. That's it was supposed to be. Crossbones works for what he is. Not too anything standing out. And Grierson's Taskmaster, bastardization, the comics version, Cheeks. We already know. Simple. J.J. Jameson as a villain. You guys already know. You guys already know. Go. Nah, I'm playing. I mean, obviously he's not really a villain. I don't think I would actually put him there because I do have a true, like, obviously GOAT, but yeah, let's put him there for jokes. Simple as that. He's a menace, I tell you! A menace! Simple. Anyway. Doc Ock. Including Spider-Man 2 and Lil S Redeem and No Way Home, even if, again, not entirely doesn't make sense, but I feel like it's wrongfully put in. Right? I think I'm reasonable to say I think he's between being great or fine. Like, he's pretty good. I don't know. I think he's pretty damn good, but I think Doc Ock deserves to have a lot of praise. So I'm going to talk it over, obviously, with y'all. Simply put, I think Doc Ock is beautifully done as a character. He has a very interesting end. He has a dope character arc. I think the actor that plays him solidifies him. There will never be a man to play Doc Ock as good as him. And I just think he's brilliantly done as Spider-Man 2. I think he's such a marvelous villain. I think he's a lot of cool, nothing but pure excellent put into his character. And I feel like he is nothing but fuego flames. And the only mixed con is the mixed assertion of why would the arms want to negatively contribute to him to try to redo his, experiment / project. But it's more the fact that that's his biggest through, and that was his mind's like last breaking straw. It's when the last thin line was crossed between them that kind of shaped his morality into a weird hazy act. So that's kind of partially where I have this shit at. But I would like to say they probably can be in great. I think he's greater than these people because how he ends off and what he lays, and I think he's just a better overall reckoning of the greater standing, with adaptation, not just only for representing a very interesting, charming case of very corny for the time, some aspects, but so gravitating and excellent in every scene that he's in, from his massacre, his fight with Spider-Man twice, his end, his drowning is divinely done. It's exquisite, right? I don't really like him in Doctor Strange. I think he's meh. Type of press and meh. I'm kind of mixed on, but I probably put him here. He doesn't really touch on my mind or heart in a greater form. Agatha, I don't know that much about her. I heard that she's a little more cool case of the liking villain, especially because she has a whole show dedicated to her. But I have no real great case of intrigues and actually peeking that. I don't know if it will actually be good to me because I have no problems with Agatha. I don't even know who Agatha is like that. I've heard the name, but Agatha doesn't really interest me in a greater form as a show. Character and any accounts of her being good, I feel like would not be to my case a matter of taste. Maybe one day I might try her out and maybe update my opinion. But from what I heard and account, she's good for like a villain having their perspective be shown. But I don't know on grand stand, how she really stands up to these people. Because again, I haven't watched her shit. The Mandarin, aka the false Mandarin, with his ideals and purpose intact, with the idea of running a muck of different high companies and taking them as his own and building up the whole Mandarin terrorist organization, building up the persona and values of what is the akin to a conqueror, but a conqueror in modern time, where he will slap all the monopolies, all the high upstanding people to pretty much purge opposition for him to get ultimate, not just fuel to the masses to obliging to him, and pretty much a move on a whole different scuff, a whole different stand. The fact that he hates Tony for reasonable reason. He wants to get with Potts. He wants to basically make her his wife. And he has a very Disney essence of comical creative being hella pressed about past shit. But if you for why he's doing what he's doing is all cultivated from the back of, oh, if I just bring about a whole echelon of battering and piecing up, Iron Man and everything to behold about, greater invite for challenge, I'll be at the top. Because I've never been at the top. I've always been at the low. And now that I'm at the top, I am the Mandarin. I'm a pillar of power stand. But it's just simply, to me, not very interesting seeing him do it. He is a wasted potential thing for the actual Mandarin. He's cool for what he is, but he's not really the most defined case of matter of villain to me. So, for what he is, I'll probably put him here just because, he does have decent motivations, mixed craft. He does have some cool shit. He does bring an interesting threat to Tony, but he's just so lame in the grandstands for, villains. And he just, to me, is like a underformed presence of, a character, that has, a decent sight of uniqueness, but is not staying to the same sense of I guess Mysterio would be the best example of a guy that is a villain for the wrong movie, but at his core, even though I have problems with Far From Home a lot more than others, I think Far From Home is just a terrible film. I don't think it's really good, right? In comparison, a lot of shit is to be called wrong for it. I think Mysterio all around this core essence has, decent common, cool and interesting substance matter, right? But I don't really think that coolness really outdoes a lot of others because it's only mixed merit of being a little more partially, I guess, to stacking weight of really evolved and interesting overlap of the masses or greater pairing for power, right? To basically try to step up as the new Tony, but as a more fiend putrid version, right? In that sense of instance, I think that's cool. But again, unlike in comparison to Mysterio, where it's tied to again the past and has mixed expression of being coming from the fact of him being a man that never had nothing and is using all his rage, all his bitterness, all his envy to full on try to make niggas fumble on their Great Kong shit and do very crack demolition of not just his name but also people. Has a lot more bringing of some interesting side of shit. Wow, in comparison to the Mandarin here, that's not there because again he doesn't bring that greater touch. Kingpin, this is Kingpin all around. I think if we were just talking Daredevil, the original Daredevil, it's pretty slap. If it's Hawkeye, I think he's pretty mediocre. If it's a new Daredevil, same creative shit. I think all around for everything that he's done, and the coolness for him to be had, that I will probably put him up here. I think he's pretty fine. I think he's cool. Standpoint of Kingpin, best Kingpin. I think the actor is marvelous beyond compare. Gourmet with the character. I think he gives a great stand of, not just being one of the most interesting representations of a crime lord that disguised himself as a respectable, favored businessman. He is a demon. Seeing a little bit of the acting crap, that this nigga has done as an actor that comes in form with this character. Not to the same degree as like a racist, out of pocket, ignorant mob boss, right? In the sense of, the Godfather Harlem show. But in the sense that he does everything he does for a true family, but power and security. He didn't have that growing up. He didn't have the closure, having a better substance matter of, greater reflection on life for peaceful hands. And he's always ruled life through fear because fear is power. He was beaten in with fear in mind, so he contributes all his power to that. And the only time he can have calmness, some peace, some salivating at greater purpose is with his wife. He commands fear. He has banger fights and scenes against this man Daredevil. Daredevil's speech to him at the end of season 3 was top tier. Season 3 of Daredevil is one of the best seasons of not just superhero television, too, in live action at least, the best. And, definitely top tier season in general, right? But even with all that crap and shit, I don't think he stands greater out, not necessarily from his impact, the lay of his mark, and a lot of his essence, is kind of up wanting us a different merit of like poor of, busting to be, in French upon as a villain that stands again pretty nifty, defined, and succulent as a character, but never really taps greater fuego because he's kind of been the same, just different essence of that. He's kind of like Franklin Saint's villain arc version, where he's the same dude, same intriguing, same charismatic, same, flavorful, but not really stacking any, greater spice, unlike these characters, where them as villains or antagonists are always kind of creating something greater merit, right? Even in the sense that they are all different archetypes of the same bearing of being, for instance, Hela playing evil, Ultron, very complex, destructive evil, Ego being very, heinous evil, Bucky being broken evil, and him being a very mascara essence of evil, where it has great tainted essence of being a man that is so easy to root for, but also reasonably despise, right? This man is a cutthroat businessman that don't fuck around with anybody and is always on malicious intent. He is a coward. He is a scumbag. He is swine, like the definition of swine, right? This dude don't remember, don't care. Sandman. In No Way Home, I think he's entirely mixed bag character assassinated, right? But just looking at him as a whole with his ideals and purpose in mind for what he's doing, all for the sake of his daughter, I think he's pretty definedly written, right? I think I would put him in fine. I mean, that was peak writing for him, even with everything to be had. Beautiful shit. Got much to say, and I think his apology to Peter was beautiful. That really got niggas, willing to cry, which proves that Spider-Man 3 is peak. But still, Loki, the case of the time when he was a villain, which is really Avengers 1. I would like to say everything leading up to that, and correspond for, his case as a villain, being pretty, stargazing and intriguing and very much slap and all-around feel. I would say that he stands pretty good, fine. He's very much wearable person, has a fine purpose, for why he's a villain, is understandable for why, always being in the shadow of his brother, wanting to be his equal, always wanting to adhere to the gloriousness of his father, but his father never accepting him as that. He was, taken from a place out of pity and wasn't actually seen as his own because he never was his own. He felt like his father never loved him the same as Thor. He always has been doing everything he's done to be the ultimate child. Loki always wanted perfection, but never could grasp the true affliction of pain that could be torched upon, you know what I'm saying, from his acts, and mix of the fact of him being mind controlled, which I feel like is kind of stupid to an extent. I could agree that he could be greater at manipulating and doing the actions that he did by Thanos, or at least more of the Space Stone, right? But saying all of it is all derived from that, I feel like it's a little bit of just not only just terrible faulty writing and basing all this means of, you know, inflicting pain, all of the depth or ways of moving that he did, all off the credit of, you know, the Space Stone fueling his booming wild actions of not just genocidal warpath and worldly wild scope of dangerous and full fucking a whole new level of catastrophic scale. Man, my man brought a fucking Transformers 3 correspondence of also, you know, demon time acts with killing people, changing people's minds. My man was literally moving around with a scepter that entirely diffused any essence of soul in a person and used them as puppets and would have people be thrown away to their death. Mind controlled Hawkeye, did all these different creative shit, and to finish my other point, my man brought about a Transformers 3 level wide scope invasion and went whole fucking, you know, horde of monsters level of destructive mayhem on New York, and was so much of a grade A threat they were thinking about fucking H-bombing all of New York. So this man already has a great gravity of being a ridiculous regard hell villain. But obviously the actor, his charisma, his chops, and every take of, you know, his character and powers is all around busting and fine, flavorful, and it's all around feel. So yeah, pretty much it when it comes down to Loki. For man, Jonathan Majors as Kang, in a sense of the being beyond, I think he was pretty goodly done. I don't have much to say about him. I think the charisma and his feel and his all around, you know, stand as being a being of very obscure regard and renown, but always still given that affliction of impending doom and stratosphere that never could be even captured, never could be even comprehended, right? It's very cool. But yeah. Infinity Ultron, I think, is mixed between being hot cheeks, as I do not like his all-around concept. I think it is all-around bogus and booming wild. A lot of mix of this terrible writing and weird maneuvers as a character, and just as the next to, like, you know, Carter being the personification of what it means to be randomness made into a character and trying to be fed as actual food when it really is a disaster walking. Like, I don't like him. I don't like how he's done. Like, his design, his coolness and all that is fine, but I think Infinity Ultron is just around bogus, whatever Whoppy do created a concept that I would say is hot cheeks. I do not see the likeness in him. The only creative, like, rationale I can see in him is that he's cool, but Infinity Ultron is not interesting to me. He's just whatever, flaming, you know, bad. Nebula, for a time as the antagonist of villains, same as Ghost, with understandable creative reason why she's doing what she's doing, has ties to bigger stuff, but is not really an antagonist, is more of a misunderstood broken character. Green Goblin, give me that drip or drown, Spider-Man. Face that, you know. I really fuck with his Phil. I really fuck with him as a villain. He's very cool. I like how he does shit. I would like to say that even with a little bit of, you know, pullback on character depth in No Way Home, that he still has much of a very frenzious, killer instinct personified, demon time, elite menace, scourger of, you know, motherfuckers' whole breaths. This motherfucker not only pulled the most creative Green Air Force energy in Spider-Man 1, No Way Home, his voice, his persistent prevail at making you stack more and more wishes of fucking demise for this dude is insane. He is the personification of how to make evil so enticing, so intriguing, and very much stand out for him being not only split personality, but having a great pool of interesting counting for being a character of very interesting renown and feel, right? Where he stacks and strikes at a lot of different aspects of, like I said, peak villainy, where he doesn't need very in-depth greater credit, of course, for why, he's doing what he's doing. He does everything he does out of mixed intelligent, greater involvement and tale of something greater. But really, he's just a mad lad consumed with psychopathic and animalistic depravity. He's very cool. And again, he doesn't really have a great psyche, of greater, core reason for why he does what he does that's tied to greater means of like philosophy that isn't just a way to manipulate, but any aspect of that and Norman's reason for becoming this very boastfully wild and ignorant of his ways and a different matter type of unhinged literal fucking goblin, right? Is cool as fuck to me. So Green Goblin will always be a stellar, defined, creative, made, and written villain to me. But even with that, I think he's on the same level as Hela, where he's a mix of like being so astonishingly bussin' fuego because of his incarnate villainy. But I think a little essence of Hela is a little bit over from them both striking on the menacing regard. I know some people might want me to put him in amazing, and I would, and I might. I think I'll actually put him, right here. But it is just so many better creative villains in matter for writing and why they do what they do to me that reasonably slates him as being over and all that. But yeah, this guy, pretty sure is like from Winter Soldier. Don't remember, don't care. Red Skull. Never been too big, into, but he does have an interesting creative touch. This super Nazi, right? Like, he's interesting. Has decent creative flavor to him. But I think, like, I'm going to be a little bit over Mandarin. The touch that he has great call for things, but he's just very stereotypical, plain evil. He always has been like that, right? But he doesn't really have anything burst in your bubble and really calling it something of greater intriguing line for character. Red Skull is just, to me, a boring, unreally creative aspect of like the idea of a person that is the entire like core of different ignorant and apocalyptic beliefs, but doesn't really pull greater interest in them. And his use of the Tesseract as a space stone, to me, didn't really dabble into anything of greater touch. And I think he is one of the mixed nitpicky problems about the first Avenger of being a villain that doesn't really strike me with great intrigue beyond just, I would like to see how this man falters. He just is reasonably menacing. He is intimidating. I think his actor's doing fine. I think every aspect of him is dope. And I think for making an entire fucking mask be this red, big crimson helm, having still so much organic and realisticity is beautifully displayed, but it isn't really having a greater take of, excellence or craft really made that really strikes me with greater care. But yeah, simple as that. You have Big Dog Ronin, who I think everything that was done with him is mix of being top of meh to bottom of fine. Like, I think Ronin works for what he is. I think it counts for why he does what he does, all being cultivated from living up to the greatest heights and revered calling of Thanos, but never really feeling like he's ever made something for himself and wanting to be this ultimate destroyer and bester of worlds. And if he can get hands on Thanos, he won't deliver nothing but gourmet fades. I think he's just a very terrific villain for a very phenomenal film. And I think he just works. He's cool, banger, intimidating. You're full, on the idea of like really full, rationalizing and multiple times endlessly dishing out the greatest possible L's to be ever seen. I feel like in the MCU, because the way Ronan was doing niggas in Guardians of the Galaxy was too peak, not just entertaining, but demonstration of what it means to be a classy Black Air Force energy nigga, right? Especially because Ronan had no qualm about telling Drax while beating his ass to his face, yeah, I killed your family, nigga, what you gonna do about it? And just bullying that nigga. If Ronan ever comes to Marvel Rivals, if that nigga ain't out here pulling a Broly on niggas, Marvel Rivals getting a 5 out of 10 that season. As simple as that. Look side though, Yellow Jacket, not really too interesting. I'm not gonna lie. The villain is just like him, Ironmonger, just with a better design. It makes counting coming with a greater sentiment of like sauce, with the fact that his reason is tied to a bunch of bigger things, and he's just a blatant psychopathic madman that has no perspective greater than just being a heinous individual. But he's just like very bland, doesn't really stand out. He's not even mech. He's like, there's not anything of greater substance matter or importance to me. This guy is a government as well from Iron Man 2. Don't know who he is. This person was cool just like in the background, but not really like a full-fledged villain of greater importance. So, probably just put them all there. Being said, I like your case of Ivan Drago's son, Victor Drago, in there. I don't like this Shocker. Put him probably the same. No offense to the actor. I don't like that. I forgot that Cecil was in the MCU. I don't remember who that is. We haven't even seen this nigga yet. What the fuck? Like, Scorpion hasn't even seen. I mean, he is played by the same guy that plays Voss Montenegro, right? And I do think he has potential to be very banger. So just off of his like stance alone, he could be something. But we haven't actually seen him as a villain. This is more like his potential as a villain. So, and potential, I think he'd be up here for what's shown. So I don't fucking know. Like, probably be like a little bit more like intriguing or flattering, with the idea that you're gonna have the most insane actor to be repping the case of the most crazed motherfucker ever in Matt Gargan. So yeah, Vulture. Even though I think Homecoming has a lot of problems, and how Vulture even is able to do what he does, I think is a problem. But I do think he's one of the most defined adaptations of Spider-Man's villains. But I think he's so much greater overarchingly peak. I think I'll probably put him like I don't know, because I feel like he's very great for what he does, but I don't think he's really on the same stand as some of these other niggas. But I think I'll give him his credit. That shit's very down to earth, very imposing an interesting tie and cause and effect for why he does what he does. And I do think he's all around cool. He just doesn't really deliver on all those better essences. But that's just me, right? Electro, including the main Spider-Man 2, has mixed understandable creative reasons for why he's doing what he's doing, and also goes for No Way Home. Even if somewhere I feel like it's a little bit weirdly done. But I think I probably would just put him like on a Nello Mexican. He's not fully a villain, even if he does go into new terrorizing out of pocketness for very understandable reason to feel upset. But wild shenanigans, like he does shit that is entirely, I feel like, contradicting of all his other mixed moves before, where he entirely dispersed all credit of like neurons and starts crashing out audaciously. Next other person now is big comparison, to the Mandarin, where there's a greater charm and essence of a guy that's doing what he's doing, and all the purpose, for it is backed by reasonable relations to someone of high standing, and you never really grace in that. But unlike the case of the Mandarin, where it's understandable connections, Mysterio, it builds a greater awe and essence of a guy that really is just the most nuanced, fallen from grace dude that is doing everything he's doing to kind of like just piggyback off the hero wagon, because he never could push to do that himself and make the possibility. He's a faker, he's a fraud, like how Mysterio is. All the different claim is, but I'm really mixed on like probably putting him, because Mysterio's kind of mixed sketch of villain of being like, he's not bad, he works for what he is, and I think he is commendable in the aspect of being a very saucy enough dude, but I don't think he really is as good as a greater form of these people. I think I'll just say this. I think he's great deal, like better than these, but not so great a case of like good. Like, I know this might seem wild, bro, but I'm just being honest. I think Icarus has a better interesting scope of villainy, such antagonistic stand, than Mysterio. I think Mysterio has an interesting call to villainy, has an interesting perspective. He has a terrific design, but I feel like he doesn't really revel in a lot of the aspects of being a villain that has so much greater grasp of like interesting, introspective, and ties to something of greater sauce and build of character, right? But it's like all based off a board of like the most weird. It's not just like take of villainy, right? Where it's all very flimsy, wild, and OD. I feel like for even Mysterio to do if we compare it to the comics, he has big differences, from it. That again, it's fine from an adaptation perspective, but I just feel like it's very utilized in a very weird sense. He's more of an Iron Man villain than a Spider Man villain, and he's fucking Mysterio. And it's like I don't know, like I don't have a problem with him coming from the back of Stark shit, but he doesn't really feel connected and real like intriguing as an overarching grandstand villain. Plus, also I think Mysterio, even with this guy's unique tangle of some shit, is not really a mainline villain. He works either as a small form villain, part of the Sinister Six, or send a greater form. I feel like he's not really the best done sense of villain from an adaptation standpoint, and makes his own creative kindle where he actually cracks at some deeper bonds of not just with Spider-Man, but as well relation to whatever he has in comparison. And which is one of the problems that is kind of there for Mandarin, where there's a personal relevation, but it's not really anything of greater merit to really care about, feel connected to. While Mysterio, you can have some greater, laking of like, I guess some spice in his character. But it falls very down short in the grand scope is because he just is so generic in the grand scope. So that's kind of where my problem comes to, where he just kind of, again, becomes epitome of mid, but he doesn't really have nothing of greater substance that can kind of fathom, greater flavor from, you know what I'm saying? I guess. To say at least in this like analogy to best explain. But yeah. I remember who this shorty is, don't know. Abomination Slosky, you know what I'm saying his name right. Works as a big brute behemoth for this man Hawk to punch, but all around greater sense of character, does not really stand too much greater out from that. And just as an actual villain, like an actual antagonistic figure, I think that, like in my opinion, because I like Abomination, right? I think he was cold, big Brock demon, bro. Straight YN activity in Incredible Hulk, bro. But I don't think an actual substance and greater stands for that. Besides being a crazy, manic, fucking mass destroyer and just deliberate, as his name is, abomination, and moving like the most wild, antic beast of most crackhead purported nigga headbutted a rocket. They really has anything to pull from in characters that really sticks, at a nigga heart at his temple. So yeah, I'm just gonna put him there. I think that's the best you can get in closure. That he has the best villainous essence, right? That actually has a cracking something of greater, again, merit. Not to be on repetition, but I just feel like he now really would be like pricking actual greater essence that really ties to anything of greater form merit, because everything he's doing is out of like random to mix kind of understandable base of hatred for the Hulk, but then it pushes to being overly hating, like straight up, like being obsessed with getting the edge over Hulk, that he becomes literally a monstrosity, which is of some great, cackle, of some like really interesting, symbolicness, some interesting parody, some interesting pull of writing, but it doesn't really peak anything more than that. Like, it's a cool concept. It's a cool fathom, of something of unique sentiment, but his creativity, his feel of character is all really just big CGI monster with nothing of greater flavor. Don't get it twisted. He has an instinct sense of character and tie, but if he actually stayed with his sanity, he stayed with some greater grass humanity, and then just become generic, just gobbledygook, angry, roided up beast trying to this body and pulverize Hulk, which, don't get it twisted, that's akin to what Abomination has usually been, but there's still some salvage or something greater, and this version gave us more humanity to take from Abomination. Abomination has been very one note. Incredible Hulk gave you a little bit more to infer and intrigue you with. They kind of come as like a different essence of character all around, right? Because he's nothing entirely like his counterpart, right? In comparison, where you talk about the adaptation perspective. And I do like they gave him his reptilian dinosaur stance as a Phil. But yeah, this man tier like shit was really a villain, Billy Butcher. But for an account for him being, I guess, some sentiment of like villain, it would just be on the mad part because again, he's not truly a villain. Main thing is like broken form dude, right? Did work under hella, but wasn't actually doing anything like that in comparison. Then you have the Mandarin, who I think is very sublime, with interesting tale of purpose why he's doing what he's doing. Everything he's doing is tied to a very emotional essence and intrigue. A man that has put down basically his sword, but had to pick it back up in means of finding retribution for not just his family, but also honoring his wife. And everything he does is in accounting for, trying to push to the greatest heights he can to find a way to bring his beloved back, the woman that gave him peace, the woman that was able to change him for the better, which unfortunately was taken from him, and a man that will rip open the heavens to get to her again. I think it's very defined. Suffice to say, pretty peak writing all around. And I think I would give him reasonable credit of being, about here in writing as a character. This guy is just so boring. I don't get intrigued. Like, he's just the same as these niggas, to be honest. Don't care. I hate that hairline. No offense to the actor. Baron Zemo. Civil War. He has interesting conviction for why he's doing what he's doing. I think in the case for Falcon and Winter Soldier, doesn't really stick out too much of greater case of substance matter, and or really kind of actually something of cool stand. I think his comic book design is way better design. I understand with his version, he wouldn't really pick it to that, very obviously comic booky, flashy case of design, because Baron Zemo in the comics really got that shit on. He has very cool essence with him, and is a peak strategist, manipulator, and villain. He is a definition of the most, top tier mustache, weasel, very calculated villain. And I feel like in MCU, he's been kind of underutilized and have a lot more potential. And maybe one day we can see that full, purified. But I think for what he does, it's very kind of whatever role that he stands with, to be honest. So, yeah, if I had to say anything, probably put him, like, right there. I think he is very mad. His plan with Civil War, don't get it twisted, I think it's very definedly done. But I think a lot of what he did, it is cunning and it is unique, but a lot of the conflict stirs from the inside, and a lot of what he was going for didn't even come into play. So he's more of a sympathetic, like, asshole than any actual presence of actual, greater endearing shit. Because all he, really wanted was to get to see the, Earth's mightiest offenders, the famed greatest heroes on Earth, the, bringers of justice, the Avengers, right, to fall. He wanted to see them crumble like fucking dominoes, right, on top of each other, see them fall like Jenga, my nigga. All from the fact that the Avengers caused the death, you feel like, of his family over in Sokovia. But again, it simply stand out too much to me. He's just very, like, basic in a grandstand. The fake Mandarin, from comedy perspective, he would be put in amazing, but obviously he's not actually a representation of the Mandarin good feel. He would be hot cheeks, but again, he's not truly a Mandarin. He's supposed to be play on that, right? True Mandarin's obviously up here. The Destroyer, though, is not really fully a villain. It's more of a fucking motionless, mindless weapon that moves about shit for the means of, whoever commands him, in this case being whoever sits upon Asgard, right? So, yeah. Simple as that. Like, he just stands like a simple case of weapon born for, interesting shit. But for what he does, for Thor 1, I think he's an interesting case of foe, which he could have been used in a more interesting regard. But, I'll probably just say that for what he is, just put him in the meh for the credit of his uses, right? M'Baku, this is not a fucking villain. Like, I didn't make this tier list. I don't know why they even did this. I mean, for whatever antagonistic stand he has, bro. I mean, I don't fucking know. He's not even a villain. What is that? Kind of villain in the case for the King Sakar. Forgot his name. Brother to the Collector, right? I think he's a little bit more harder A mid in this sense. Like he works, not anything too great standing out thing. I don't really think he's very interesting or cool. I don't really care about him. I forgot who the fuck this shorty is. Fuck, I've seen her before. Bullshit, but I don't know who she is. I don't know who this Clark person is. This villain from Moon Knight is unrememberable. I think his Cheeks is a D grade from what he's actually inspiration of. Don't remember, don't care. Remember, don't care. Agamotto, another he's a more monster person. I remember him being kind of cool, flashy, but not anything too interesting. Wanda, though, her entire reason for why she's doing what she's doing, I think, is mixed between being understandable loss, but kind of stretching on very flimsy fuck reason. Unlike in the comics, where her mental decline actually makes a lot more, very much to be debated, just as much, very much flawed, but still somewhat of a more asses like actual bussin' like ordeal of character dilemma, character flaw built up over time after trying to do right. Like I'm very much sympathetic and compassionate to the ordeal that has went about building up this volcano inside Wanda to literally define pure chaos. You know what I'm saying? But Shawty is not done in the best credited way to where I actually feel like actually attached or somewhat sense of like really care for why, because again she chose deliberate, fucked, flawed, uncare, for, actual matter of atrocities or fuck that she's doing. She pulled all type of gaslights against Vision. She's all around not a good person. And again, there's nothing about true understandable feel, and there's some greater sense of like accessible action to be made for her to push past this, but she doesn't actually make it, and her moves in WandaVision cannot be rationalized. I think her moves in Multiverse of Madness just prove her to be just a deliberate, destructive, craze, fuck shawty in every case of the way. And yeah, like she's just flat out just a horrid human being. All account for what she's done, even forgetting I can understand it. A lot of this time she is hella crashing out over robot penis. Like this is a standpoint of being high praise, you know what I'm saying, for being cool, beautiful, whatever, having all these different cool essences, but the main core of her character, her entire essence, is entirely shattered of goodness when you realize that half of the time Shawty again is moving mad wild, moving schizo, moving like a frenzy flame user over penis. Like woman, I get it. Like I'm not trying to, bare minimum that down because I'm being jokey. But she literally is like the opposite reversement of a man that crashes out over losing a bad bitch. This is what losing a good man does to a shawty, bro. Like that's half of the greater deal for reason. And it's just fuck ordeals and mindset. It's because she's talking about, oh, I lost my family. Your family was never real. You made an illusion to cast away your regret and sadness in the back of your mind and never to be revealed. Remember, these people obviously don't really care for her. In the case for Moon Knight, don't even remember that motherfucker. Don't know how great a deal these people are. And it's just a matter to be had with them. Gorda God Butcher. Wasted villain. For what he was, though, I'll give him this. I don't know exactly where I want to put him. I'll say this. For what he was, though, I have to put him here. I think for what he was a very, not just somewhat terrifying. I think Christian Bale, whoever the actor is for him, played Batman in The Dark Knight, was wasted. I felt he had a great touch, a great sense of coolness, sympatheticness, darkness, very creative brutatiousness, but never really flamed out greater tie of that greater sublime touch that really was, possibly the most, I feel like, hyped up villain in a while to be shown in the MCU, and could have pulled greater essence to me if he just not only got a better script, was in a better movie plot, and just could have been more stuck in of like a whole different weight of busting. He is the greatest example of wasted potential. But even in all that, I still think he's pretty good. His reason for wanting to, hate and kill gods, his corruption by the Necro Sword, his ending to some sense, and the acting, greater purpose of him, I do think is pretty top notch and all around grandstand for his character and adaptation, greater form. But there's just better ways to adaptate him, because from what I know, the Gorilla God Butcher only has like 2 adaptations from the comics, animated and live action. I do think again it's pretty solid ending and fit for him, but he could have been better definedly written and tight knit to get a greater showing of not just his actual butchering. He's Gorilla God butchering. You got him being fucking neutered of his greater, antagonistic demon timeness, but also kind of downsiding the greater flavor of character depth to be had. So yeah, anyway, we're almost done with this. This is a long ass tale. It's been at this for probably almost fucking 2 hours. Zeus. Booty, cheeks, laughing clown with nothing but cornball radiating through his veins. He stinks! Cheeks, nigga. Then you have forgotten name from Thunderbolts, Vallard, all this shit. I think she's like a mix of being like a more comparable to like the state of like very much antagonistic and borderline pillar of like very stingy, very fluctuatingly, disgustingly mean and gangster, but very appalling woman like Amanda Waller, with some mixed aspect of the contingency and charisma or like jokester vibe of Cecil Stuntman. And she to me gives off like some essence of like female Norman Osborn, and the pull of like how she will be doing anything to service herself. She's a coward. She is fallacious. She's greedy. She's nosy. She a backstabber. She is pain smoking, a cunt in every film of the way. And so to me, I think that puts her in pretty good standing, right? But again, not anything of too much greater essence. She works for what she is. But I think like her villainous stature has never really did anything too dummy busting, and she doesn't really stand too much out in greater grandstand. So yeah, these people got Namora and Atuma here, who I don't really see as villains, but in their credit for them even being considered them, I would like to say that they're mixed rational, because they didn't even like really touch on their ideals and their perspective of it, right? But as a right hand woman in general, as well, mixed regard, maybe even commander of Talokan, she'd be on the same scuff. And then you got like Atuma, who like in the comics got a lot more of interesting possible roles to be had, and there's a great potential for that. As without going on Hope My Other King speakers, Atuma is one of my underrated like villains. He is the executioner and or right hand man of Namor in the comics, but his eventual betrayer, because he feels like Namor is not rightful king. He thinks some aspects of Namor's pull as a not just king, but also surface dweller as well, has not only affected the status quo of Atlantis on being a place that people see as soft, as a whatever place land, people come and go inside of it. He doesn't uphold the traditions. He sees Namor always as bad because he is a, half-breed. He's half Atlantean, half human. He's a mutant. He's not a true, full-blooded Atlantean. And all of the case of his, greater raw hatred is all coming from the fact of the matter that he always just being on good terms with the surface world, when they will always be not only a insignificant, like puny insectoid race to them, but the fact that they always will be asking for more, and he will never adhere to the strict policy of that Atlantis is number one, and that he shouldn't be sometimes seeming like he's bending the knee. He shouldn't be basically trying to be all goody two. He thinks the idea of Namor being a king that moves with more, you know, diplomacy, with more compassion, with more modesty, is pulling back on all the strength of Atlantis. It's glory, it's credit of respect and fear, and also its pay of, higher standing, with Atlantis being on top of it. It's already, arguably domain in the sense of the surface world being tied to, the sea, that rightfully they should be trying to wash these people off the face of the earth and rule fully. But this is all coming from, again, greed, selfishness, power, and this lust for crazy activity. Atuma is just a arrogant war dog. But in this version, most likely will never come into that case. Even though there's a great capability, depending on the writing they go with, that Atuma could come into being this man that despises Namor and always has, and sees him as a disgrace to the greater means of Talokan and all that. But yeah, remember these people? Who the fuck are these niggas? From like the fucking Halloween special. I don't remember them too much. Namor, Submariner. My people call me Akuku Khan. My people call me Namor. Is a character that I have said that I really like. I love Namor in the comics. I think he's a very nuanced, interesting, and complex character a lot of people don't peek into. I think that him as a character is more, again, on a strong sense of antagonist. And obviously, he's a kind of famous mixed bag anti-hero. I think he shows a more strong sense of being anti-villain to even great character. But in the case for the MCU, and him being an antagonist to villain role, even though I don't think he's entirely a villain, even though his purpose, goals, and the way he moves is definitely on that warlord activity, I would like to say, out of everyone here, there's a lot of things to be said about him. And I know this is also a mixed diverse pick. Some people think he's shit. Some people are different. Some people think he's actually pretty kind of good. You know what I'm saying? But if you ask me, I think out of everyone within this tier for a great deal, that he has as much good to even up here as them. I think I'm going to be, reasonable and say that he's over Ronan and put him there. You see, what I'm going to do is, because I think it's just time to change this. I know I'm long into the thing to go about doing this, right? But I think it's reasonable that it's more strong to say mid-May is on the same cusp, right? So you could just, also pull this and put meh. But let me just talk about Namor for a minute. Like, Namor, with his purpose, is all from a black and white perspective. He's been around since 1571. That's the late 16th century, right? And so, in the sense for why he's doing what he's doing, is all cultivated from not only false understanding of the world, with him seeing things from very ancient, underwater, ancestry, generational hatred perspective of the surface world, and seeing paranoia and having big, superstition about them, because he feels like there's a great possible threat that if they would know of Talokan and that vibranium lies deep in underwater, they will destroy everything that he cares about to gain it, to enslave or pillage his people and do terrible things to them, like it had happened to his ancestors and his mother's people. He saw slavery, which was not based on racism for natural historical thing, because that's something I feel like people don't actually acknowledge. He didn't see exactly racism from the same creative iconic boast that like the African slave trade was. It doesn't take away the bad that it was, but especially conquistadors went over to go about colonizing, pillaging, and imperializing over there to spread territory and salvage new matter of not just, resources, weight, and opportunity, but pretty much to boost their numbers, to pull new heights for their civilization, as they were a vast, exploding empire at the time. So that is what happened there. So in this sense, he saw that, and he sees the surface world and their greater powers as possibly the same. He also fears that Shuri, cannot actually promise protection to his people. That the scientist in this sense being Williams was not the only person to make this device, and that it's not just about the scientists, and that because there is a threat and there's been compromisation on his people for letting vibranium and letting knowledge about greater stuff of vibranium be more let out, even though that's ignorant on his side, because vibranium has been unfortunately been jacked out of Wakanda, been traded, been jacked, from other people, and been utilized for a very long time. Right? Seen as a problem. He sees the opportunity for destruction of the surface world to bring peace. And he sees this through very much warlord activities. As a culture like him that is greater, possibly stained by warrior standing, as he runs a militarized kingdom, right? Is all built off the back of putting down opposition before they could put down them. He wants to go to war with the surface world. Now, some people try to critique him and other people about, if he would actually go to war, he would lose. And that's true, most likely in the grand scope. I don't think he would die if we just talk about us as humanity. But I think in the grand scope, it wouldn't help him because he would lose more people. He would cause more demise for not just his people, more or less overall, but just a great deal to other people that don't really deserve it. And his entire purpose of inflicting this pain and brewing bigger conflict is off the baseness of running with very out-of-pocket, naive to great, very much disparity and understanding the way of life on a very black and white scale. He doesn't see the greater gray in it, not only because he can't. I mean, a nigga lives underwater. I feel like a lot of niggas are just being ignorant and to an extent, like a tiny bit intellectually dishonest on the foundation of his entire beliefs and why he says and or does what he does. I feel like a lot of people don't actually understand why Namor would see the things he does from his perspective, where he sees everything he's doing as a reasonable rationale to go about destroying the threat before it comes to him, because he's seen what will happen to people that see people as a threat or see people as weak, and so he believes that that's the way to go. He has, I feel like, every reason from his perspective to see the way he feels and run with the warmonger standpoint of wanting to stamp his foot on the opposition before there's any possibility for annihilation to come. He doesn't know the greater political effects and most likely wouldn't care because it wouldn't change his feeling. He's the only person in Talokan that feels this way. He doesn't feel like there'll be a change. And to be fair, if we go by, obviously extending beyond when Wakanda Forever was put out, no Avengers are coming. I don't think if we go by the actual reasonable statements about how strong and his power scale and what he's shown, which I don't think is contradicted at all, just looking at face value merit without actually, again, disregarding the context or the situations that are there, which there's no situation of him actually struggling or being put down, because I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen anything like that. There's nothing like that that shows it like that, right? Like, I don't understand where that argument might come from, right? That he has every reason to feel the way he feels. No, I think he's wrong. Yes, because I think it's all around the grand scope of stupid action. Even if there are countries where, in comparison to real life or not, it will want to pursue vibranium and do what he's doing. He has every capability to be safe. No one knows of Namor and all that, and Namor trying to do this is fucking up his entire original plan of wanting to stay hidden. Granted, he wants to do this so when he does go to war, he has the upper hand. No one knows of Talokan. No one knows of Namor, and if they do, they are too afraid to speak out, or they don't have a great reading on him. Namor is a very hidden figure. He wants to stay on the upper hand. Him rocking with Wakanda is a little bit of doubt, a little bit of desperation, but he's willing to go to war with them as they would be the greatest threat to him, as Wakanda is greater than any other nation, including nuke-like stuff. So him going to war trying to demolish Wakanda gives a showcasing of not only him having reasonable recolade of, just power, but also planning. Because how he would go to war, we don't know if he's just going to go whole breach siege mode on everybody, but there's a great potential that he would go about in a more strategical, proficient way that isn't just that. And it's also like, it really depends on what happens. Granted, if there's any Avengers that could be called or be summoned, like Hulk or Thor, that I'm saying he would lose, even though I think Hulk is the only person they have a more, close fight with, and I'll be talking about that in a greater form when I eventually do my MCU power scale and tier list. But to make it very clear, I'm just saying, I think Namor has a lot of interesting shit. I think his charisma is cool. I think he's a defined adaptation for him. I think he works for what he's doing. I don't think he's the dumbest MCU villain like some people might say, because I think there's a lot of niggas like here that are actually fucking stupid, or, you know, might do stupid actions, or act genuinely fucking stupid. Like, I don't agree with that. Like, that's a dumbass statement. But I just feel like, you know, niggas that say that either haven't watched as much as the MCU or don't know what they're talking about. And we're just talking about movies a little bit here. There's so many TV shows. There's so many different people. There's so many people that have been shown in a comic book or a tie-in video game with the MCU that you could say are fucking stupid. And obviously it's a broad statement, right? Like, it's hyperbolic. But I'm just saying, like, I feel like he has a more understandable reason. I feel like he has more substance to what he's saying. I feel like his reason why he came to his belief is understandable from his perspective. And again, the reason why he was full push to it, because there was a chance that Sherry was going to be able to convince him, to give him the potential to understand why he does what he does, because it's been explored and been explained, especially by this one video that was comparing why Namor does what he does in comparison to Black Adam, and why it's a better anti-hero representation than him, because obviously he kills main characters, he threatens main characters, he does actions that are very much selfish, very much appointed to a very, you know, prevalent, very, like, non-caring, no fucks given, straight hands, straight demon time acclimate for, you know, the character that he is. Sorry for the been recording this for a minute. But again, all the acclimate, you know, to be this type of dude, I feel like makes sense in this sense of, like, going and thriving off the idea of basically full security if we would devastate and demolish, you know, the surface world before they could come and do the same is there. But Shuri, again, was possibly convincing, but when the death of one of his own, a woman that he possibly has seen like a child, he's known probably since she was fucking born, oldest of his people. I think he's pushing like 500 years old if I do the math right. Born 5071, due 2022 or due 2025 now, definitely pushing 500 years old. Old ass nigga. Seen her probably since she was in diapers, nigga. He sees this woman die. And he's like, nah, you ain't about to pull up into my shit after I was trying to be cordial with your queen, even though he did threaten her life and he did promise her that death. And kill one of my own. Y'all have now just put a dent in any fucking compassion that I got to any of these fools. They will suffer for coming up into my home and my fucking pad and disrespect my people. Hell nah. That to me, I don't agree, but understandable crash out. I'm just saying. And I just feel like he's very cool. I think he has a great performance by Tenako Ruta. Heard he's going to be in a new, you know, Avengers movie, Avengers Doomsday. So I hope, you know, he lives up to the honor. Can't wait to see what he does, right? I think, you know, he going to do busting things. I can't wait to see what more that he has. I also just feel like, you know, his speech, what he's done, how he lost, everything makes sense. I mean, I could go into an entire rant and whole video for a while, because again, I think Namor is very much misunderstood as a character and also in the MCU. But I hope I've made my case strong enough for why I believe that Namor is reasonably put here. You know, I would like to put him up here because I really like him. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like he's understandable for why he does what he does. And when he gets humbled and gets properly understood in the fact that, you know, he can't best everybody. He has gotten humbled the first time he's ever been defeated. First time he's ever been, you know, maybe put on his back. The first time he probably ever actually felt mortal. Probably ever bled in his life. He now understands and understood the idea that a true ruler doesn't rule with wrath, but rules with compassion. And a wise king, in the words of Odin, never seeks war, but should be always ready for it. He also showed Talokan. Talokan is beautiful, and obviously, you know, he has something that he's trying to protect. There's children. There's life in Talokan. And if that would be taken from him, that would mean the end of everything. So, yeah, I mean, I fuck with him. That's enough of a rant. That probably was like fucking 10 to plus minutes of me just explaining why Namor should be, because I feel like a lot of niggas don't think he doesn't, but again, I disagree. It is what it is, though. Cheeks, don't know, but Cheeks. 3 cheeks. Fat ass Zeus. Can you see this motherfucker? Don't know what that is. And the shorty is from She-Hulk. Don't know. Don't care. Don't care. You know him. Don't care. Stereotypical bad. Don't care. Slip it over. This man. Modok. Hot cheeks. Kang had decent showcasing of like having some more endearing to be had, but it was just like about the same as Killmonger on one. It's wasted potential, bad rep, bad adaptation. Nigga lost the ants, and you can't really salvage anything greater from this version of him. He's just bad. It's terrible. Not a good rep of him. Funny dude, but not a true character. High Evolutionary. And he gives a very interesting sense of devotion to fuck shit evil. And I think is one of the more peaker people. I think he is good about here. Yeah, I'll put him there. Yeah, pretty good. Like, here's the thing. Like, I feel like fine is a little bit disrespectful title, but I feel like they work are very defined for what they have going on, but aren't like that greater grandstand peaking for me to really say anything of greater form weight to be had or not. But I think it's like a mix of like them doing a great deal, but not entirely being out of coolness and just reanalyzing this entire tier list. Here's what I'm gonna do. Boom. Boom. I don't know, not really a villain, but I had to put him as a villain. Be just there, man. Barely remember this dude. Barely remember. Barely remember. Barely remember. You were Doctor Strange. I don't really like him. Don't care. He's written Doctor Strange. Reasonable mixed bag crash out, but very over aching on the idea of being a man that really is pulling all these callous, fuck fallacious ordeals of dark order course of actions with trying to basically bend reality to his means of basically preserving his baddie. And it's just like, I understand it, but to do all this shit over is kind of draining a lot of the unique substance matter to kind of be maybe candle for this man, right? So yeah, no, it's just me probably. I just don't really like him. I don't really know where to put him because I don't think he's really a good villain, but not necessarily a bad one. He's just very underwhelming. He's not really good. Like, there's nothing really about him that really stands a greater sense to me. I think he's just bad. You don't really think he's good. Do you remember him? Man, funniness to him, but it's just stereotypical bad guy number one. He's kind of whatever. He's just another sense of meh to me. Still the same shit. Freaky ass nigga. The dude's been a villain in the past, involving the X-Men movies. So, I mean, for what he's shown, probably put him like on the same boast of like Crossbones. How he moves, like it's not anything of regard, to say the least. Shorty, his ex's sister, I think has a lot of endearingness, but didn't really full nail a lot of greater shit. I will say that I think she was also wasted potential to an extent, but it's not entirely bad, but it's not entirely good either. Obviously, like, she's good mid fill, and like obviously they could be in the mid / meh, but in the sense that they work for what they are, but they have some arguable assets that can maybe push them to being bussin', but work in a decent, fine essence, right? So I feel like what she's going for, why she is what she is, has a great craft, a cool sense of something, but never actually nailed in a cool execution. I think that she was very much wasted and was not actually a defined showcasing of a very much more, very intricate and gravitas character in the comics, where she pulls a lot more interesting array of shit. She's like Charles if he had an entire flip philosophy and personality, and it's just so much more greater dabble and shit. I never liked Sabretooth and X-Men shit. Even like Will of his coolness and those hot cheeks, booty. Case of this. Evil version of Watcher. Don't remember, don't care. Death. I don't really remember too much in Greer seeing of her for the request, but because she's deaf and because she's bad as fuck, I could put her somewhere in greater form. But I think, I'ma just make a whole new tier out of jokes. There you go. you know, remember, so I've seen this case. Hate that design for the Thinker. Terrible design. Red Hulk. This is a big royal tiredness and representation shit. I never actually watched the movie, like I said, but I have seen because of what he's done, and Red Hulk looks decently cool. So I don't know. I don't know where to actually put him and him being actually like better, but he's probably the same like for Destroyer, where like he works for what he actually is, but he's not anything a super great thing. Now for the man, the myth, the legend, most people's fame, greatest villain, the character that will probably have everybody up in storm. Character I say for last. So I think Thanos is the greatest comic book villain of live action and animated. I think he is one of the most peak, unique, creatively sadistic, tyrannical, pillar of might, and undoubtedly cracked dudes in comics. I think the voice acting on him is perfection. I think his quotes are undeniable like him. I think he's so unbelievably aura built up and defined in his being. He's been built up for decades, it seems like, and he was so perfectionly done. And it's like, yeah, like I just think that he is just so peak and bussin' that you can't even like put him down. And I do think, he actually is the GOAT. And I'm going to just use the rest of this to kind of explain. So, like, again, simply put, I think he's the GOAT. Not only because of the fact of how defined of a character that he is, in the sense that he gives off a great impression. He has a great impulse. He has cool fights. He has cool motivation and feel. And I know a lot of people have, like, tried to poke holes into his motivation. And again, like with Namor, but with some others as well, there's a lot of misunderstanding for why. Okay, number one, right? Like, he does what he does from a false understanding and interpretation for the fact that him clearing out half of the universe will make balance in the order with countless, form of, weight to be needed to be carried on certain other civilizations or being taken advantage of by other people will now open up the doors for a greater evolution. And even though the same thing will most likely happen again, it will make the universe more clear, more open, more focused in his mind. Now, he came to this conclusion not only from being genocidal, being a maniac, and thinking that the devastation of his race needed to have everybody be entirely, basically, executed and exonerated from existence. He's the last of his race, the Mad Titan for a reason. He's a survivor. He has very psychopathic and out-of-pocket reasons for why he does what he does. And unlike in the comics where he does everything he does for being, shunned as a child, being pretty much a demon born and scorned since death, right? And doing everything he's doing for death, right here. He does everything he does as the fallacious ideal that if he would gain all 6 of the Infinity Stones, space, mind, power, soul, time, and iconically the case of the milestone, because it's not like a nigga said that before, right? Because it's not like I said that before, because it's actually 6, right, in full, right? Because the fact that he has water on the top, because again, he gets space, reality, mind, power, soul, time, 6. Yeah, so nigga not saying that, right? Because in a sense, the matter for a nigga, saying that was off, not just speaking fastly. I'm glad I've never said, greatest speaking for this, because nigga not only is recording this at a later time, been talking for a very long time, and been doing a lot of shit within the day. But again, like I said, to reiterate, the most concrete case of matter of speaking, like I said, I'm glad man was able to not speak precisely on that, but also give you guys the best case of video with this. But the full conclude on what I was saying, getting all 6 Infinity Stones with a snap of his fingers, eradicate the entire universe from the inside out, and disperse all the weakness and redo it in a different way, and pretty much purify the worlds. He grew attached to a world that was in disarray, with being attached to Gamora, and have an interesting relationship with her and others, and generally didn't want to actually do what he did against Gamora. And the way Gamora felt a great deal of sadness and pain killing Thanos, because Thanos was, even with all his out-of-pocketness, a good father to her. His tyrannical and empire, standpoint, I think gives a great sense to him. He already has that in the comics, but in the comics, he's kind of like this voodoo, death walking essence of person, where everything he does is just kind of on the most gruesome, fallacious means. Thanos is the mustache twirling villain, but instead of twirling his mustache, he's twirling his big ass chin left and right. You know what I'm saying? On some cartoony shit. And this, he gives us more great essence, his prestige essence, right? And like I said, God again, man was able to go about very precise, speaking, right? Because man's obviously able to tickle himself and be precise on this shit. But I really want to go full steer home that again, like I said, greatest case, coherent way to speak about it is that this is all from a psychopath's perspective. It doesn't have to be the end all. How he came to his conclusion was very faulty means, and you could say with the critiques that he could give infinite resource, but infinite resource would just fuel the bad that he thinks. He could do this and make this, but the Infinity Stones do have a limit. They do have the capability to be stopped. He cannot reshape reality forever, and he does have to change shit. And he can't just make reality actually come into play indefinitely. He basically can reform what is seen to be in some way the sense of reality around. The reality only affects the person and people that he wants on an individual level. It does not actually represent all of everything. And if he would do it, if anything, that would be a waste of the power to make an illusion of order when I can make absolute order. So every argument I feel like people have made against Thanos since 2018 can really just be toppled on their head with the fact that, it doesn't change why he's saying what he's saying. And at the end of the day, it's just why he believes what he believes. It's not really tied to anything of greater essence of that. And I do think that in the comics this is better just because I think it's more fun. But I think them trying to go with a more in-depth philosophy, a lot more cracking that, a lot more different stand for why he's doing what he's doing is interesting. I feel like, again, he's very cool. I think his voice acting, what he does, and the fact that he is the only, because it is a big thing why he's the GOAT, in my opinion, besides his ideals and the way he's moving and how he's done shit with the status quo. It's the fact that this nigga is the only villain out of any movie to technically win. So that's what makes him the GOAT, in my opinion. That's all I would say. I'm done with this. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope you guys will enjoy more of the content I have in mind. I love y'all. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace out, mommy. Love y'all.